it's now time to host the Groupe PSA. Mr. Carlos Tavares, CEO of Groupe PSA, will share with us his vision about the 7 megatrends that will shape the future of the automotive industry. And he will debate with Mr. Jacques Attali, economist, writer, and also with the president of Positive Planet. And to lead this debate, I now call Mr. Cédric Bécher, the founder of Nomadis Agency, on stage, as he will moderate this carte blanche. Welcome, Cédric. Please.
Hi, Valérie.
Hi.
Thank you very much, Valérie, for this introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be your facilitator for the next session. Carte Blanche with Carlos Tavares, head of CEO of Groupe PSA. I would like to extend a very special welcome and greetings to our online audience, as this session is going to be broadcasted internationally on all continents, and I hope that many people from all over the world will follow this debate. And I would like to really tell them that they are welcome. During the next hour, we are going to discuss strategic issues which will impact not only tomorrow's mobility markets, but also, more widely speaking, the very way we live on our planet, the very way we live on Earth. And I would like us to really keep in mind during the next session one overarching objective. So far, we've been talking about fascinating technology issues, etc. And I would like really for this session us to focus on the very long term, to focus on prospective issues. How can we anticipate the evolutions and even the revolutions which will shape our world tomorrow? How to be a corporate, positive citizen in such a fast-changing world, in such a fast-changing environment? Let's try to focus on this objective. And just before we enter into more details, I would like to briefly share with you a corporate overview of Groupe PSA. Because we don't have a lot of time, I'd like to focus on 2 key messages. First message is that Groupe PSA is today one of the most efficient and profitable car makers in the world. The group went through a major turnaround since 2013. And it's now reaching record results with a margin of 8.5% for the first half of 2018. The group operates on the 5 continents. It sold 3.6 million vehicles in 2017, which is plus 15% compared to 2016. That's the first message, a very positive and strong dynamics. Second message now. In such a fast-changing environment, the group deploys its core techno strategy, focused on 2 things, 2 pillars. One, very strong and recognized know-how. That's the first pillar. Second pillar, smart partnerships. And we will get back to this during this session with Carlos Tavares and his special guest. Smart partnerships. How do we leverage collective intelligence to find solutions for the future, mobilizing all actors? And talking about technology, because I was mentioning a minute ago, core techno strategy. Technologies are here to develop performant engines. They are here also to help develop autonomous and connected vehicles. And they are here also, of course, to develop electrified vehicles. And just about electrification, I would like to share 2 messages here. First, from now on, all models will have an electrified version. And by 2025, 100% of the group core range will be electrified. So, by going very quickly through this brief corporate profile, it may well illustrate the fact that not so big companies, agile companies, can reach the top and succeed in a fast-changing environment, facing all the challenges which we have ahead of us. And now I would like maybe to play a very short video to share with you to complement this first introduction, and then we will start our debate. Can we please launch the video? And it's now my pleasure to welcome Carlos Tavares, CEO of Groupe PSA, on the stage. Welcome. Please. Thank you very much, Carlos Tavares, for joining us ahead of the press days of the Paris Motor Show. We're very happy to have you here for this session, for this carte blanche. You are the CEO of the PSA Group, Groupe PSA, since 2014. So you actually drove the turnaround which I was mentioning a few minutes ago. And today you decided to share with us your vision for the future through some trends. Can you please very briefly explain us why you chose this topic for today's session?
Well, very simply because, in fact, we are very lucky. We are very lucky that 5 years ago we faced a near-death experience at PSA, and since then we recognize that we need to be Darwinian, which means either we adapt or we disappear. That is very clear in the mind of the executive committee of the company. And if we say that we are Darwinian and we want to adapt, then it's better to anticipate what is going to happen and try to understand the major trends that are now ongoing on this planet, and try to understand what this means to our business, what this means to our organization, what this means to our stakeholders. And this is the reason why I think it is our responsibility to try to understand what's going on and what is going to happen. This is the reason why we are excited about the fact that we are going to face dramatic change. And why are we excited? Because dramatic change means opportunities. Of course, many risks, but also many opportunities. And we have demonstrated in the last 5 years that we are able to grasp some of the opportunities by the acquisition of Opel Vauxhall as an example. But of course, this chaotic world that we are now going to face means opportunities, and this is the reason why we want to understand the trends.
Okay, but I guess that in today's world and in your task as a CEO, you must be overwhelmed by information. You must be exposed to huge masses of information, small signals coming from all over the world. So how can you sort of aggregate all this information with your teams, of course, with your partners, and focus on a limited number of trends to try to better understand what's going to happen?
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. I mean, we are not missing information. There are too many, and it is important that we try to trigger what is important for us. But you see, what we really believe in is the fact that our mission is to deliver freedom of mobility to our customers. Freedom of mobility is something that is very important for the humankind, of course. It is very much related to democracy, to the ability to move around in a very spontaneous and comfortable way. And this is the reason why we have been trying to identify those 7 trends. You would say 7 is already a lot. Yes, it is. But given the amount of information, I think it's something that we can embrace. And I would like to mention the rise of sharing economy. The sharing economy is something that is now moving quite swiftly in terms of giving more importance to the usage than to the ownership. Also the need for clean mobility. Clean mobility is now an expectation from all the customers and all the citizens, and I've been telling them that's absolutely okay. We are going to deliver to you the clean mobility devices that you are expecting from us. Just be aware that clean mobility is like biofood. It's more expensive, so please take that into consideration. It's also about the connectivity challenge. Connectivity is something that is now all over the place. It started with the smartphones, and now it's a continuum of connectivity between home, the car, the office, and the everyday life. Of course, we also need to recognize that customization expectations are still there. People want personal solutions. They want that we adapt to their lives and not the reverse, which means that customer behavior in terms of customization belongs to something that is still to come. And last but not least, I will mention digitalization, which is going completely to transform the way we do business. And we have currently a specific program inside of the company to completely re-engineer the organization of the company to make sure that we face digitalization as an opportunity to be even more efficient in the way we do business. And last but not least, of course, the autonomous vehicles, which are going to reshape the world of mobility, but represent also a big challenge in terms of technology. And as you know, PSA wants to bring the autonomous vehicle in the safest way, which is maturing each level of our roadmap in a very robust way. Those are the major challenges and the major trends that we see facing the company, and we are very excited about adapting to this new world. And I would like to show you a small movie to illustrate this.
Please, let's go ahead. Can we play the video? Thank you.
The world is evolving. Our industry faces never-before-seen changes. 7 mega trends have emerged that drive our world. Today, the market landscape is dominated by 3 big markets. But the perspective for 2030 is different. New markets, new regulations, new expectations. What kind of mobility will appear from this diversity? Today, sharing has emerged. Shared mobility is something we've just tested. But urbanization, congestion, and the development of new sharing concepts redraws the lines. By 2030, over 25% of our car industry profits will come from new mobility offers. Or car sharing and ride-hailing will be multiplied by 10 by 2030. Today, electrified vehicles are very expensive. But tomorrow, they will be economical and more attractive. We have integrated a circular economy, an opportunity for our plants. Today, phones, watches and houses are already connected, and the car is the next connected device.
I'm coming!
We expect 1.2 billion of them to be connected by 2030. That's an estimated business value of $160 billion by 2022, 3 times more than today. Driving one's own car is the image of freedom we've had for years, decades. In 2035, 24% of vehicles sold will be self-driving cars. Artificial intelligence is currently in its nascent stages. Soon, it will be a part of our day-to-day lives, including cars, data management, factories, workspaces, customer experiences. With customer online presence growing, the user's experience will be more of a priority than the product itself. Our challenge? Riding the wave. More than ever, agility will make the difference.
Thank you very much for this quite inspirational video. As we can see, we're talking about trends which will occur in the next 15 to 20 years. Huge challenges, but huge promises as well. And today, in order to challenge this vision, but I guess hopefully also to enrich it, you have decided to invite a special guest, someone who actually dedicates quite a lot of time to think about the future, but also to act concretely to make a better future. And I'm very pleased now to call Jacques Attali to join us on the stage. Jacques? Welcome, bienvenue. Thank you very much, Jacques, for taking some time and joining us today. You are an economist, you are a writer. You dedicate a lot of time also as the president of the Positive Planet Foundation to think about the future. Can you please briefly tell us what the Positive Foundation is all about and what positive economy is all about?
Well, it's nothing to do with the debate of today, therefore I would be very short. Positive Planet Foundation is a foundation works in order to help people to prepare a better future for next generations in many different dimensions. Positive economy is the economy who is preparing the future, and it's exactly what you are doing. You prepare the future, having in mind that you need to have also something to present to your shareholders today and tomorrow in order, as you said, to survive. And that's this question of surviving and
Darwinism
and long term. You have to survive and you have to think long term. If I may react to
of course,
what I saw here, I would say that almost everything has been said, because all these challenges are here. Other parameters maybe will interfere, which is what kind of decisions the governments will take, because the move of innovations will be quicker if governments decide to put in place regulation. And very often in history, regulation is an incentive for innovation. And I think it will be quicker than forecast. One of the rules of thumb for everything is that something you forecast for 20 years happen in 10 years. Because it's obvious that it will happen, therefore it happened quicker. Therefore, I would say that whatever is on this board will happen quicker than you forecast here. That everyone is forecasting. In my view, the key challenge is how to make 12 billion people or 10 billion people having freedom in a world where freedom will not be available. The answer for me is one, sharing, which means not anymore owning. And I think that the concept of owning a car will be declining. Cars will be owned by someone else than private individuals. The size of the cars will be, if I may be forecasting something, larger than today in order to adapt to a sharing car for 10 or 15 people. The added value of a car will be more in the software than in the car itself. And your fight is, are you going to be Microsoft or Nokia? Where is the real added value? Where is the real future? And Nokia means dying, and that's the real challenge. Which means that I think, in my view, the most probable future is a larger car than today, where someone will come in it as an individual to use it for a while, plug his own phone or whatever, to personalize it, to get what he wants to get, and not a self-driving car. What is interesting to note is that this is already almost the case in China. I think China is and will be more advanced than any other country. One of my questions will be, what do you do with China? Will it be a partner? Are you going to buy some Chinese companies? Is it possible to buy Chinese company without being cheating or whatever?
And both of you tend to agree on the fact that freedom of movement is very important. For you, should it even be a fundamental human right? And how realistic is it to make such a pledge in a world full of 9 billion people by 2050?
Right. I think Mr. Attali is absolutely right. And we see that we have been offering for the last century a significant freedom of mobility to our customers in a way which is very focused on ownership. And this is going to change. At the same time, I think that the need for mobility is increasing day by day, which means we are not worried about the fact that there is a market for mobility, a big market. This is the reason why we have created a mobility service division and a mobility service brand called Free to Move, to be surfing on that growing need. What strikes us is that the density of technology that we now have on the automobiles is getting higher and higher. Possibly the density of technology for the automobiles is now becoming higher than the aerospace industry, which is extremely striking, which means that the cost of technology is also increasing. And then the question would be, if you are sharing the mobility device, possibly you can afford the cost. If you are owning the mobility device, then it's going to be extremely expensive. So we see some kind of polarization of the market between high-end products with high density level of technology, very expensive cars. From the other side, possibly as expensive cars, but shared mobility. So we need to embrace both. The question is it going to be completely polarizing? What about the middle class? What are they going to be using as a mobility device at the end of the day? For us, it's a question, and of course, everything which is related to the sustainable mobility at one point needs also to match what is going to happen in 2050, when there will be 9 billion people on this planet, and many other things will have to be addressed, and not just clean mobility, not just sustainable mobility. But this kind of polarization is still for us an open question. I don't know if Mr. Attali has thought about it.
Yeah, Jacques, you want to...
No, I agree with you. I mean, we have to make clear that this is a challenge. 2 or 3 comments. One, things will be different in Europe, US, China, India, and Africa. We may think that India and Africa will have the same use of cars as we have now today, because they want to go to cars, and the fact that there is no production of car in Africa is a black hole that has to be filled a way or another. Therefore, it's a huge market. And for a car producer, you can say, it's enough. I don't think about new technologies. I have a huge market for the future. That's it. I don't think it's true, because what we have seen in Africa, in many other sectors, is that Africa is going to the next generation
Faster, right?
faster,
Right.
with a leapfrog on existing, as we have seen on mobile phone, no fixed lines and mobile phones. Therefore, I think that Africa is also going, and there are very interesting experiences in some cities in Africa on car sharing, which are very, very interesting, using technologies too. Then I would say the question of having a car as an element of sign of social status, in my view, is going to decline, both for middle class and upper class. In a certain sense, having a very costly car will not be seen as clever. And cleverness, what means cleverness? Cleverness means the best use of your time. If you are wealthy, or if you want to pretend that you are wealthy, you have to pretend that you're able to make a clever use of your time.
So the codes will be changing in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The code, the social code, the criteria of wealthiness. A nice house will stay because it's a sedentarian, but I would say that having a car, and that's a challenge for you, is not going to be seen anymore as a sign of social status.
And you introduced another point before, Jacques, where you're saying that maybe, so these trends are going to happen very fast, even faster than we believe. And you also mentioned the fact that governments and many other actors are going to influence this. So
Yeah, we had
can we elaborate a little bit?
We had a forum of a Positive Planet 2 days ago where we gather, not far from here, cities from around the world, positive cities, which means city preparing the future. And some cities are already have decided, as you know, to be totally without cars. There is a city in Spain, there are cities in north of Europe. My view is that this will come much quicker than forecast. One day we will all wake up with competition of politicians. Who is going to be the first to decide no car in my streets? And that, I mean, no individual cars, it doesn't mean no transportation. It's why sharing cars could appear as a compromise between individual cars and public transportation.
Carlos Tavares,
I think this is a great point. And by the way, let's make it very clear. We are not afraid of this kind of situation because we believe that we can adapt and transform our companies. We are not sure that the societies in which we operate are ready to accept the consequences, which
Absolutely.
is another topic. But as a company, as a corporation that was facing near-death experience 5 years ago, we are not afraid of this transformation. I just think that we need to ask our stakeholders to be a little bit more sharp in the way they describe the city of 2030 or 2020 or 2050. What is the footprint that they want to give to pedestrians, to two-wheelers, to mobility devices, to cars, if any? This is something that is still something to be developed because it's all about the things we do not want. It is not enough about what kind of city do we want for ourselves, right? What is the footprint that we want to allocate to mobility devices, to cars, to two-wheelers, to pedestrians? How do we want to live inside of the city?
To avoid all conflicts in terms of public spaces, also
And to
usage of
prepare
public
for it,
spaces.
and to plan in a positive way, which is stop being punitive and start
Right.
being aspirational
Right.
in the way you want to create this city of the future. The other thing I would like to point out and have Mr. Attali's opinion on is, what about the divergence between rural areas and the urban areas? We are facing from time to time some criticism where people in the rural areas will say, well, that's very nice. That's decided by the elites, in the urban elites, and they decide this for them because they want to enjoy downtown and the monuments and the gardens for themselves. But they are impacting my life in the rural areas. What about this divergence? Do you feel the same way, or do you see?
Well, yes, I think, of course, it's a real challenge. First, I would say, for a lot of use, drones will be an answer. Drones could be an answer. They cannot be a real answer in the cities, but for rural areas, they can be a very convenient answer. And I would advise that you look at this market as part of your own market. Second, I would say sharing cars can be used in small cities. more even, I mean, we use that for bus schooling, and that can be used quite easily. And I would say that the relations between small cities and large cities will be very simple in that way. Sharing cars will be everywhere. I think it's the answer. The difference will not be so high, except the use of drones. That could be really very efficient for.
But it's true that if freedom of movement is for everyone, of course, urban and rural spaces should be included. And that's a major challenge ahead.
Well, it's paramount. You see, at the PSA Foundation, we see so many cases where people do not have access to their jobs, to their training, to their healthcare, because they have no means of transportation. They have no mobility devices. So, of course, car sharing is a great answer, and it's something that we are considering very strongly. At the same time, it's important that we don't get this divergence between rural areas, urban areas from one side, and I think that we need more aspirational description of what the future of the cities will be in terms of footprint allocation. What do you want to allocate as an area to the pedestrians, as an area to the two-wheelers, four-wheelers, etc., and to which extent? Because at the end of the day, we may say that it is all about the environment, but I don't think that is true. It is not only about the environment.
Absolutely.
It's also about what kind of life, what kind of area sharing you want inside of the city, and this is something that of course, the mayors of the big cities need to describe so that it becomes aspirational and not only punitive.
And this, I mean, inventing tomorrow's cities means that we very much need collective intelligence. We need nations to work with cities. We need small companies to work with big ones, NGOs to work with global corporations. How to foster, this is a question to both of you, how to make it happen, this collective intelligence, going beyond traditional frontiers between actors, and how can we really foster this collective work?
Well, first, I think it's a big challenge because we are in a world of a lot of individual behaviors. We can see it on the electrification of cars currently and the way we are moving to sustainable mobility. We are seeing that it's very difficult to have a strategic planning that is totally coordinated between the energy industry, the mobility device industry, all the manufacturing industries in terms of battery footprints, battery footprint of the recycling of batteries, between the governments in terms of tax and incomes from taxes. All of this needs to be better coordinated, and I think so far we didn't find the solution yet.
Right.
We need mental flexibility, and I'm sure Mr. Attali has an opinion on this one.
Jacques Attali, how to make it happen, this inclusive governance in a way? You're going to the G20 very soon to introduce some results of the big consultations you've been doing. How to promote inclusive governance? How far can we go on this path?
It's very difficult to do it. We are going to propose 20 solutions for the G20 that we have gathered through a consultation of more than 55,000 people around the world. It's clear one of the most important issues is to increase the cost of emission of CO2, and that will have a lot of consequences. But I think one of the elements which should be very important in the challenge of tomorrow in this use of cars is the question of the use of time. Energy is not scarce. We know that we can, whatever we look, we find energy. The energy is available. Information is not scarce. I give you an idea, I have it. Then information is not scarce. The only thing which is scarce is time. And I think that in the next 50 years, the most precious thing that will be sold or kept is time. And therefore, I think one of the most important challenge of your industry, how is to make the best use of time that we spoil in driving a car. What can we make? And then I think, will it be you, car manufacturers, or will be someone else from the entertainment industry, for education industry, that will fill that gap? But a very important answer will be, what do we do in my individual car or in a car sharing to have the best use of his time? It's interesting, if you share a car, then it's an occasion of meetings. Meeting or whatever kind of meeting you can have with interesting people. And a lot of meetings have been made in that occasion. As we have seen with Uber sharing cars, which are fascinating stories of people meeting in a Uber. But I think it's not only that. The technology of the best use of this time will be essential for the future.
Carlos Tavares, will you be selling time in the future?
Well, I think yes, I'm very optimistic about what Mr. Attali is saying because, you know, autonomous vehicles, being shuttles or individual cars or car sharing mobility devices, is something that we are now preparing very strongly, and that we have been making a lot of tests, including with normal customers here in the region. And we are very optimistic about this. I would qualify the autonomous cars as a device that will give you back quality time.
Yeah, right.
It gives you back quality time. It's obvious that if you are on Sunday evening in a traffic jam and the car is now autonomous, you can take care of your children, your friends, make all of your phone calls and look at your...
And this is a major value proposal for consumers.
This is a big value proposal.
Definitely.
Quality time that we give back to people. And the other thing that makes me very optimistic, given what was said about other non-automotive companies, is that there is one thing that the human being has not been compromising on for the last century. And that thing is safety. And this is why, being a car manufacturer for more than 100 years or even more, we feel good about being able to develop and validate and certify the safety of autonomous cars step by step with a 5-leg roadmap that we have in PSA. Because at the end of the day, one thing the customer and the citizen will not compromise on is safety. And I think that for automotive groups like ours, being able to give back quality time through autonomous vehicles with a high level of safety that we have matured and validated in a step-by-step approach makes total sense. I still remember a few years ago, there was the representative of one of those GAFA companies who was showing in many conferences like this the photo of his son. And he was saying, well, my goal in life is to make sure that my son on this picture will not have his driver license. That was the statement.
Is it a dream for future generations, not to have any driving license?
Well, my point is that perhaps he will not have a driver's license, but the father will enjoy to know that his son is being driven in an autonomous car made by a serious car manufacturer that knows how to certify and validate the technology. And for not having any compromise on safety, I think we are in the right place as a car manufacturer. And we see that some of our competitors are struggling with those things by not meeting the expectations of customers who think that the car is autonomous, but in fact it's not yet autonomous.
Of course.
And of course that creates some problems, as we may know. So this is again a big opportunity.
Big opportunity and big challenges. Absolutely.
The fact that giving back quality time to the customers is something very valuable.
Let's have a look, I suggest to both of you, let's have a look to what a panel of young people from all over the world think. As I said before, this session is broadcasted internationally, and we've asked 4 young people from different countries, different continents, to ask you, both of you, a challenging question about tomorrow, about their understanding, their vision of mobility. So these young people live in Cambodia, in the US, they live in Africa. Jacques, you told also said a lot of things about Africa, in Mexico, and I suggest that we start with the first young entrepreneur, a young leader, Armando Regil from Mexico. He's an entrepreneur. He's currently teaching at Stanford. And let's have a look. Let's listen to what you would like to ask us. Can we please run the first video from Mexico?
Hello, my name is Armando Regil. I am founder, president, and CEO of I2Co School of Transformative Leadership. I am now here at Stanford University, attending a master class on systems leadership and systems transformation, such a beautiful place here at the Rodin Sculpture Garden in front of the Museum of Art. It's a perfect environment for being inspired and to send this message and this question to you, Mr. Carlos Tavares. Nice to meet you. I would like to ask you, in this very fast-changing environment, as we're living the 4th Industrial Revolution, the most disruptive time in history, don't you think that small companies that are more agile can better fit the market needs, especially in the mobility sector? Because as everything changes so fast, it's a great moment to rethink and reimagine many of the trends around us. So I would like to ask you this question. I'm very happy to be able to connect with you. Thank you very much.
So, Carlos Tavares,
Well,
all is beautiful for the future?
Well, it is
not?
beautiful, but not only the small things are beautiful, but certainly the small ones can be beautiful. I would like just to remind a couple of things. First, what we would call today big companies are not so big, and PSA Group has been challenged many times for the fact that we are only a 4 million car company compared to the big dinosaurs of 10 million car companies. So at the end of the day, compared to others, we are not so big. But of course, compared to startups, we may be very big. We should not forget also that once upon a time, Peugeot was not so big. It started small. So we should not forget that. And perhaps that this young manager will be the CEO of a great and big company one day. We never know. So yes, of course, this makes sense. And I recognize that startups can be much more agile than what we are today. This is the reason why, when we look at our mobility service strategy with the free-to-move platform, we are creating the access to many operators of mobility services who are startups. And not only we have created this mobility platform called Free2Move, but also we have different operators which are startups in which we have taken a share to support the growth of those startups. And we should never forget that what we see with those startups is that they need advice, they need a geographical span, they need funding, they need from time to time advice, and we are supporting them in a way where we try not to interfere in their operations. We try to let them free breathing space for them to grow in a profitable way. Of course, if not, they disappear. But this is exactly what we are trying to do.
So it's a matter of ecosystem, smart partnerships in a way, right?
Yeah,
Finding ways to work together.
Exactly. We need to recognize that smart, when you are small, you can be much more agile, and we recognize that. And that's what we are trying to support with this free-to-move strategic approach. At the same time, we also see that many of them come to us. Many of those startups come to us because they need funding, they need technology, they need engineering support,
critical mass,
they need geographical span. From time to time, we say, well, why don't you come with us in Asia? I say, no, we are not ready to go to Asia. We want to stay in Europe. So it is also about giving them a platform for their own expansion. And we don't have to oppose. I mean, all of this is a bigger problem. We don't have to oppose small and big. We just have to work together, and I think it's very possible. Okay, before we jump to Cambodia, Jacques, you have a word to say about small companies?
No, I think what you said is wise, because the culture of a large group may be quite different of what is needed for new technologies and to move quick. And we may know some. And I don't find the word in English, but la barrière à l'entrée, the cost of entry is declining, which is strange. Even in, I speak under your control, but the cost of entry, even in the car industry, is declining. Therefore, the challenges may come from everywhere. Sure. And the fact that you are open to innovations coming from elsewhere is very good. I see also another challenge, which I think is the challenge of tomorrow. We are more speaking of the challenges of after tomorrow. One of the challenges of tomorrow are the Chinese companies which are going to be big, coming with huge innovation in AI, not in the engines or safety, classical, conventional car, but in AI, and that could be a tsunami, if we say that in Chinese.
Unfortunately, we don't have a question from China, but we have one from Cambodia, and precisely about one of the topics which you now just mentioned, Jacques, so artificial intelligence. Can we run the video from Cambodia, please? A question from a young entrepreneur.
Carlos Tavares, Jacques Attali. I'm Monivul. I am quite concerned by ethical questions in relation to AI development and its impact on our society. Today, economic models are challenged, people expectations are changing, new techno transforms the way we produce and manage our business. So according to you, what are the key qualities for a responsible leader?
Big question. Key qualities of responsible leaders, plus a question on ethics on artificial intelligence. Pick up one question.
Well, we could debate about this matter for hours. And of course, it's all about understanding, again, the expectations of the communities in which we operate. And this is, of course, from one side, exciting. From the other side, it's a challenge, because the expectations may depend in the regions of the world in which we operate. So in terms of ethics, I think that it is all about making sure that we are bringing value for the quality of life of the people in the societies in which we operate. And that's something that we care about and what we continuously look at. And it is very, very interesting to see, for instance, that in Europe, we don't speak now so much more about delocalization. A few years ago, each time one of our big companies was investing something outside of Europe, we would say, you are making delocalization. Well, now we understand. We understand that it's important to bring capabilities, technologies, manufacturing to some of the surrounding countries to create conditions for their own development and bring technology and also support the learning and the training of the local talent for those local societies to be growing. In a wider scope, and I'm sure that Mr. Attali has very important things to tell us on this matter, we also see that if we want to protect the planet, we cannot avoid the debate about the wealth in the north versus the south. And it is all about this matter, which means you see that if we would say that the planet is in trouble today because the Western countries have developed their economies in a way which was not responsible vis-à-vis the planet resources, now we will say to the South countries, well, now you need to slow down, guys, because you are going to eat too much resources, and they are looking at us and say, okay,
please don't
guys,
go too fast.
Yeah, right. What about ourselves? You already have the wealth, and you have taken the advantage of somewhere spoiling the planet, so what do you do for us? And ethics is all about giving them the possibility also to access to a certain quality of life, healthcare, education, technology mastering, that gives them the possibility to develop their own societies and their own wealth, without, of course, damaging the planet, but also without using the planet protection as an excuse to ask them not to develop themselves.
Of course.
This is also about ethics, and each time we go somewhere else in the world, we try to bring this technology to them and this behavior. But I know what Mr.
Very
Attali
interesting
thinks
definition.
about
A positive
I totally agree with what you said. What we call positive development means to be both ecologically and socially sustainable. And as you said, it could be contradictory. Because the best way to be ecologically sustainable will be to reduce the standard of living of two-thirds of mankind. Of course, it's not a solution. And the best way to destroy the planet is to increase the standard of living without looking at the natural resources. Therefore, it's important to move the nature of development in order to use less raw materials, less energy, and more information, more ideas, even in the other countries. What we have seen in Africa with a huge development of mobile phone and the use of it for many new technologies demonstrate that it's possible for third world countries or former third world countries to make a leapfrog, to find a shortcut, and we should live on that. And I'm sure that in some countries such as China, which is a dictatorship with a long-term view of what is needed, which is ecology and urban planning, they are moving in the good direction. Not as we like it, because it's far from freedom, something else, but they move in that direction. And of course, we should learn from them, I mean from the rest of the world, the good way of using technologies in another way. There is still a problem with ethics on AI, which is pending. Many problems. One is the fact that it's going to destroy a lot of jobs, and we have to find a way to find new jobs, not only in AI itself, but in other dimensions, another issue. And also, AI on the long term, if we don't master it, if we don't control it, can destroy mankind. The very famous science fiction novelist Asimov has written about it many things, and he invented what is called the Asimov laws, laws to be given to AI in order for AI not to be dangerous for mankind. We should implement these laws. The problem is that this should be implemented worldwide, which means law which says simply an AI should not be in position to act against his own creator. It's very difficult. Take an example in a car. we know the very famous paradox or question of who a car is going to choose. You have to choose between a baby and an old woman in crossing a street. That's a question. But what happens if a car become independent and decide that it's in his interest because the AI understand that the owner wants to destroy it, that he will destroy before. Therefore, it's not for tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. We certainly have to try to put limits. We have been able to put limits to nuclear energy weapons or to chemical weapons. We could do it. And by the way, it's one of the 20 proposals that we have made on the G20, which is to create a moratorium on AI military research in order to control that.
Before we jump to Africa, do you want to answer maybe, Carlos Tavares, on this topic on artificial intelligence, on ethics? Do you have a couple of key messages you'd like to share about this?
Well, so far, in our industry, we don't see a significant danger so far, but we certainly recognize what Mr. Attali was saying. When we talk about, again, back to safety on autonomous cars, the example that Mr. Attali was mentioning is clear, and it exists. When you are facing one of those very numerous driving conditions where an accident may happen, and what do you choose? Well, you have to make a decision on the software, right? You have to make that decision, and then you have to certify that you have made the right decision, right? In terms of ethics, what does it mean?
Explain the criteria, yeah.
To choose between the lady with a young child crossing on the road and an older person on the sidewalk, right? So in terms of ethics, that's where it is as a starting point. And this is the reason why autonomous cars needs to be developed on a step-by-step approach, because there is not only the reliability of the technology and validation of the software, but also the ethics goes with them. And I think on autonomous cars, at this stage, the biggest challenge is about self-certification.
Right.
I mean, when there will be a problem like the one we are mentioning or any safety-related issue, the citizens will look at their governments and they will ask them, so what do you do about this? How do you make sure that those guys are giving us safe products? And then the question is, against what kind of reference are you going to validate what you have done? And then in the reference, you have the ethics which are embedded in the reference, because if you say it's okay as long as you meet the reference in terms of self-certification, then the reference needs to carry the answer to the question that Mr. Attali was raising.
And the reference must be independent of the car industry.
Absolutely.
Ideally.
Absolutely. That's very comfortable for us, but it's not easy for the governments, of course.
As we're running out of time, I suggest that we switch to Africa now. Let's jump to Africa with a question from William Elong, an entrepreneur. You are mentioning the drones industry. Well, he's actually manufacturing drones in Africa. Let's see what he has to say. Can we please run the video?
Hello, my name is Elong William. I'm the CEO of Drone Africa and Alpha Drone Holding. We are the first drone makers in Cameroon. So I just have one question for the car industry. How do you plan to integrate artificial intelligence solutions to build the cars of the future for the African market? Thank you.
Very briefly, because we don't have that much time more, but the future of the car industry in Africa, he's not asking for low-cost models. He's talking about artificial intelligence. What's your message?
Well, we have completely understood that nobody wants to be a tier 2 citizen in the world, right? That's very clear in our mind, and that's why you don't have a low-cost brand in the PSA group, because we believe that what we need to give the customers is value, as much value as possible for an affordable price, which is not the same thing as low cost. At the same time, I think Mr. Attali already mentioned it, we need to use artificial intelligence as a shortcut to clean, sustainable, affordable mobility without going through all the steps that were already implemented in the Western world so far. So that's where it is. And again, in terms of using our mobility service division, which is totally autonomous in our company with a specific executive committee member, Brigitte Courtois, who is with us today here, she has breathing space to move on. She only has one constraint. The constraint is that she needs to respect all the other employees of the company, which means she needs to make profit.
That's a good message. Jacques, you have a word
about... Can be zero, but it needs to be positive.
All right.
Just more
word about Africa.
No, I was not aware that you have a film on a video on Africa. I just remind you the example of Rwanda, which is now using, not as an experiment, but at a full spread developed activity, all the distribution of drugs in this country is done by drone since more than a year now. And it's very interesting because it's a small country in the middle of nowhere in Africa. Very stable, it's a rare case in Africa, and it should be followed, because if it works in this country, which is small, but with a lot of difficult landscapes, this could be a real game changer in Africa in the distribution of goods.
With huge challenges for the government in terms of regulation also.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Okay.
Very interesting experiment to follow.
Okay, I suggest that we jump for a last question to the United States of America, to Michigan, with a very short question, which is going to be very interesting to go toward the conclusion of our session.
Hi, my name is Rosie O'Brien. I just graduated from University of Michigan. Today, the Z generation represents a quarter of the population. What is your message for forward thinking for young people?
That's not the easiest one.
Well, being a 60 years old guy, it's difficult to give a good advice and message to this young lady. But what I would say is take care of your freedom of mobility. Take care of that. Be sure that it's not going to become something which is dependent on your wealth, because I believe that freedom of mobility is something that human beings really need to protect. We see in the Western world and mostly in Europe that freedom of mobility, and most importantly, spontaneous mobility, comfortable and safe mobility, is becoming something that may have a price, which of course is the starting point of a problem. And the advice I would give this young lady is take care of your freedom of mobility at an affordable price. And everything that would be challenging that may be a danger for the future generations.
Be very cautious with it. Jacques, a message.
I will continue with your message, and I hope you will agree with what you say. Accept also the mobility of the others, and take care of the mobility of the others, which means a lot in a world where borders are being closed to a lot of people. I would just mention a very well-known poem in Japan, an haiku, who said, when you are traveling, think of home. When you are at home, think of traveling. Which means that when we are moving, we should think to people which are at home, because one day we'll be at home, and reciprocally.
It's a matter of empathy, no? At the end
It's a matter of understanding that the others are almost as important as we are.
And that's a great point. And we are back to the 9 billion people in 2050.
Exactly. Yeah.
We cannot address the mobility need if we don't address the significant increase of the population on this planet. Mobility, but also scarce resources. Of course, all of this goes together. Clean mobility, resources, the way we are going to interact with each other means that more and more inclusive governance is going to be the key. And how do we create the conditions for inclusive governance is something that goes far beyond the PSA group. But what I want to share with everybody here today and with Mr. Attali is that we are eager to participate in this direction, and we don't fear the change. We are really happy and ready for the change, and we just want to figure out with all the stakeholders in which direction we should be going. We are now moving in the electrification full speed. The product offensive starting here at the Paris Motor Show is now starting. It's going to be impressive, and we are very comfortable. But this is just one small piece of the puzzle. We need to be included somewhere in a broader picture.
So we are approaching the end of this session, but it was only a very short hour in a way. If I'm not mistaken, you're about to launch a very disruptive, if I may say, initiative of stakeholder dialogue. You're going to meet with a lot of people from civil society, scientists from all over the world. Can you say a word about this, and what is this exercise all about? Why do you launch this?
Well, let's be humble. It's a very simple thing we want to propose, which is we identified the 7 major trends. For each of those trends, we have identified some experts in the civil society and people who are deep thinkers about each of those trends. And we are going to have a succession of discussions with them We had one this morning with Mrs. Delgado about the change in the consumer mindset vis-à-vis ownership and usage, about the great things that have been done in Mexico City in terms of clean mobility. It was absolutely fantastic to discuss with her. And for each of those trends, we are going to be discussing with the experts and listen to their ideas and interact with them as a car company we are. And then from those 7 or 8 discussions, we'll try to take the best out of it and influence and inspire the strategy of our company. We are now in the middle of the Push to Pass strategic plan of the PSA Group. This current plan will end by 2021. And after 2021, most probably, we'll have a strategic plan that will go up to 2030, which is a very long-term plan, and we want to prepare for that.
We need to feed this.
And we need to feed our own thinking and try to be as thoughtful as we can by having these discussions with people who know a lot about those trends.
Jacques, how do you react to this stakeholder dialogue initiative? Do you think that it's part of what should be expected from a corporate?
No, I do think it's important. A company must have a plan 2030 or 2035. And you must have this kind of plan, and to have this kind of meetings is, I'm sure, fundamental. It's the first time we met. And then I must say I'm very comforted by the fact that a French company is led by a very lucid and open-minded CEO. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. And I'm now pleased to hand over the floor to Valérie Offenberg for the next session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Valérie, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.